warm, moistured, and filtered. That is inhalation. Now, in exhalation or expiration of air, the lung tissue, which is stretched at inspiration, we call it back to its original. When you breathe out, so the head goes out, the intercostal muscles relax, the ribs swings downward and backward, then the diaphragm relaxes, is curved upward to become dome shape. The volume of the thoracic cavity decreases, and then the lung contracts. The air pressure within the pleural cavity increases above the atmospheric air, thus forcing air out of the lungs. Differences between inhaled air and exhaled air. You have oxygen inhaled is 21%, but exhaled oxygen is 16%. Carbon dioxide inhaled is 0.03%, while that exhaled is 4%. Nitrogen is constant, 79% inhaled, 79% exhaled. Then water vapor inhaled is variable, while water vapor exhaled is saturated. What importance does respiratory system have? 1, it supplies oxygen to the body cells when you breathe in, so you are able to perform the functions of the body. Then it reduces heat load in the body, especially in poultry. It also removes carbon dioxide from the body. Then it promotes gaseous exchange. So those are the importance of respiratory system. Then we'll now be talking about the nervous system. Nervous system is a series of conducting tissues running to all parts of the body. It consists of two broad divisions. We have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system consists of the brain and the spinal cord, which coordinates the activities of the animal. So we have the brain and the spinal cord consisting of the central nervous system. Now, the peripheral nervous system consists of the somatic systems and the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is divided into the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system, which is concerned with the regulation within the animal. It regulates the events within the animal. So this is the diagrammatic representation. We have the nervous system divided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Now, the central nervous system divided into brain and spinal cord. Then the peripheral nervous system divided into somatic system and the autonomic nervous system. Then we have the autonomic nervous system divided into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. Now, we're talking about the brain under the central nervous system. The vertebral central nervous system begins as a hollow tube which expands to form the brain that is enclosed in a bony case called the cranium on the skull. It's up here. Then the whole brain is covered by membranes called meninges. The brain consists of two types of nervous tissue. We have the nerve cells called the gray matter and the nerve fibers called the white matter. The mammalian brain is divided majorly into three main parts. We have the forebrain, the midbrain, then the hindbrain. Forebrain, the large part that is forward. The midbrain is the narrow middle portion. Then the hindbrain is the rear part, the one behind. You can see it even in the diagram on the board. The forebrain is the large forward part that consists of the olfactory lobes, which receives sensory impulses for smell, and the cerebrum, which is the seat of all voluntary action. So we have the olfactory lobes and the cerebrum in the forebrain. Cerebrum is responsible for all voluntary action. You want, like I'm talking, is voluntary. I may decide to keep quiet. You may want to walk, you may want to run. The cerebrum is the one that is responsible for that. Then in the midbrain is the narrow middle portion, which consists mainly of optic lobe that controls your sight. So the midbrain is the one that controls the sight. Then we have the hindbrain, which is the rear part of the brain, which consists of the cerebellum, which is concerned with balance, body posture, and it receives impulses and coordinates actions, respiration, digestive movements, heartbeat, and blood supply. That's the cerebellum. Is found at the hindbrain. Now that is that for the brain. Now to the spinal cord. That's the second part of the central nervous system. The spinal cord is a continuation of the medulla oblongata. It runs through the neural canal of the backbone. It communicates between the brain and other parts of the body. The spinal cord controls all reflex actions of the body. Now, we're talking about the peripheral nervous system. And I said it consists of the somatic system and the autonomic system. The somatic system is concerned with body movements and overt reaction to internal and external stimuli. The nerves of somatic system carry messages to and from the sense receptors, from muscles, body phase to the central nervous system. The autonomic system, comprising of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system, is primarily concerned with controlling the body's involuntary activities. I said cerebrum controls all voluntary activities, but here in the autonomic system, it controls all involuntary activities, such as beating of your heart. You can't control that. Digestion, you can't control it. Secretion of sweat, so as to maintain an optimal balance in the temperature and other aspects of the body's internal environment. This function is accomplished through the opposing actions of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. The sympathetic division is usually involved in excited actions, and the parasympathetic is in quiescence or resting stages. So the sympathetic is excited, while the parasympathetic is in resting stages. It serves as preparation for either running away or attacking, but in both cases, it is the sympathetic division that responds to emergencies. And I said it's the one that is related to excited actions, but the parasympathetic is the one that is related to resting stages. So actions that are related to resting stages, the parasympathetic is in charge, while for sympathetic is excited action. So emergencies are attended to by the sympathetic divisions. So we're talking about the nerve cell. The nerve cell is the basic unit of nervous system that is specialized for transmission of nervous impulses. It consists of three main parts. We have the cell body, the dendrites, and the axon. The cell body contains the nucleus and the nucleus granules and has a number of branching extensions called dendrites. From this diagram, you see like the branching of a tree. The dendrites receive incoming nervous impulses and pass them to the cell body. The axon is a single fine long fiber which carries impulses away from the cell body. So dendrites receive impulse, while axon carries impulses away from the cell body. Axon has a few branches and may be surrounded by sheaths. The end of the axon connects with another neuron at a gap called synapse, or with an effector. So that it connects with another cell body at a gap called synapse, or with an effector. These act as a valve so that impulse only pass in one direction. Then we classify neurons into three groups. We have the sensory or the afferent neuron, we have the motor or the efferent neurons, or the connectors. And the connectors, that's the third one, or what we call the intermediate neurons. The sensory or afferent neurons receive impulses from receptors, e.g. sense organs such as your eyes, hair, and the rest, and they transmit the impulses they receive from receptors to the central nervous system. They usually have rounded bodies. The motor effectors receive impulse from central nervous system and transmit them to effector organ. You see, sensory organ receive impulse from receptors, that is, they receive impulses from the sense organs, your eyes, your hair, and transmit it to the central nervous system, while motor neurons receive impulses from the central nervous system and transmit it to effector organs such as muscle glands, and they have star shape. Motor neurons have star shape, while sensory neurons have round bodies. Then connector intermediate neurons, they receive impulses from sensory neurons and relay them to the motor neuron. So they are the intermediate. They stand in between the sensory neuron and motor neuron. So they receive impulse from sensory neuron and transfer to the motor neuron. The process involved in nerve impulse transmission. How is nerve impulse being transmitted? When the nerve endings of the receptor organ are stimulated, a nerve impulse is generated which is transmitted along the sensory or the afferent nerve from the receptor to the spinal cord through the dorsal root by chemical and electrical processes. In the spinal cord, the impulse is relayed through a synapse into the intermediate neuron. Through another synapse, that's another nerve, the impulse is now carried by the motor or the efferent nerve, which passes through the ventral root of the motor or effector organ, which responds to the stimulus. A chemical such as acetylcholine carries nervous impulse across synapse. When the nerve endings of the receptor organs are stimulated, a nerve impulse is generated and transmitted along the axon by the chemical processes of the next nerve fiber. In between two nerve fibers is a space called synapse. I've said that, through which nerve impulses are transmitted by chemicals called